in the first ever Comicology segment that I did, I was talking when I got to Groot. I was talking about his origin and everything, and I said, and what was it that I said were the only words that Groot could say? Was it A, hello, B, I am Groot, or C, no? I'll tell the answer later on in the show, but right now, let's start the show. Welcome to this week's edition of the Comic Hero Show. I'm your host, Victor Nunley, and I am the Comic Hero. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are, episode 25. And I want to thank everyone who has supported the show from day one. And if this is your first episode that you've ever watched, thank you for watching this episode. This is a monumental time for me. I never thought that I'd actually get to this point. Okay, I have 4 things to talk about, so without further ado, let the ranting begin.
What you talking about, huh?
Okay, the first thing I want to talk about is X-Men Days of Future Past. I just went out to see this past Saturday, and it was amazing. I thought it was just probably one of the best comic book movies I've ever seen in my life. Oh, by the way, I'm about to tell what all happened in the movie. So if you haven't seen it and you want to, you may want to mute this segment because this is a spoiler alert. All right, in the movie, it takes place in the future. In this future, the Sentinels have evolved from anything that I or anyone who's ever watched the X-Men cartoon from the 90s or read X-Men since whenever, because anyone who's ever read X-Men, and it doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are, you know what the Sentinels are. You know what they're tasked to doing. These Sentinels at the beginning of this movie are like any Sentinels I've ever seen in my life. They evolve to the point where they're not just capable of killing mutants. They're capable of learning what their power sets are, and then are programmed to use them to study their power sets and to adapt to it and find ways of killing them. And in this future, the mutants have evolved from just wanting to kill mutants. And as a matter of fact, they started taking on a mind of their own. They started just killing, anything that moves. And Professor X and Magneto have finally said, enough's enough. Something's got to be done about this. So Wolverine volunteers to go back to the year 1973 and prevents a murder from happening that triggered the Sentinels from being existent, and that was the murder of Bolivar Trask. And Bolivar Trask, in this movie and in the comics, created the Sentinel program. And the way it was told in 1973, Mystique murders Bolivar Trask, and instead of just terminating the Sentinel program or vetoing it, the U.S. government decides to follow through with it. And nothing but bad things have happened. So Wolverine goes back to the year 1973 to prevent that from happening. And he goes back. He goes to the Xavier Institute of Westchester, New York, to find Professor X of 1973. Now this Professor X back then, well, before Wolverine went back to the future, Professor X told him that he didn't have his powers in 1973. And I'm thinking, wait, what? I thought Professor X always had his powers. We find out that it was during this time he was in a dark depression, and he started taking some kind of serum that healed his severed spine after being shot by Magneto, but it robbed him of his powers. And he's been drinking and just in a deep depression. The only other person at the institute that was there was Hank McCoy, otherwise known as Beast. Well, they enlist their help, convince them that they need to stop Mystique from murdering Trask. And they enlist some help, and they enlist the help of Quicksilver, who in the comics is actually Magneto's son. But then we sort of, but in the movie it kind of hints that later on. But they go ahead and they go to a prison, and they free Magneto. Let him know about everything that happened in the future and whatnot. They stop Mystique from murdering Trask, but then some other things happen, and the Sentinels end up being activated, and they come to Washington, D.C., to find some mutants. And then Magneto, he takes on a mind of his own, and then he goes and tries to drop a baseball stadium all around D.C., preferably the White House. And I tell you, the actor who played President Richard Nixon on there, I don't think he looked all that much like Nixon, but he sure sounded like him, that's for sure. But anyway, they stop Mystique from murdering Trask. Trask doesn't die. He instead ends up getting imprisoned for selling military secrets out. And but the Magneto from the past dies, and the present ends up getting, well, everyone that had died, all the way from X-Men, well, X2, X-Men United, and X-Men: The Last Stand are all alive, and yes, even Jean Grey is alive. But then the extra scene in it was Apocalypse. They showed Unsaba Noor, who is Apocalypse, and then I yelled, and tell you, when I saw that, I said, "Apocalypse!" And everybody was like, "Who?" But if you had just listened to all that, I warned you to mute this. So if I spoiled it for you, you pretty much spoiled it for yourself. Okay, the second thing I want to talk about is the movie Blended. I went to see that also, and the movie is just downright hilarious. I think this movie deserves an Oscar, just like X-Men: Days of Future Past deserves an Oscar. It's just great. It's kind of odd, but it's still, I think it's a good movie to take your kids out to see. I mean, I know it stars Adam Sandler and former SNL alum Kevin Nealon, but it's just great. It also stars Drew Barrymore, Shaquille O'Neal, Terry Crews. I mean, I'm not really going to go into detail about the movie. But let's just say, it's also going to talk about, Adam Sandler's character works at Dick's Sporting Goods, and it's also going to talk about the guy named Dick who's the owner and founder of Dick's Sporting Goods. But it's not the actual Dick. It's actually played by Dan Patrick. For all of you who don't know, Dan Patrick currently hosts his own syndicated radio show called The Dan Patrick Show. He is with NBC Sports, but for a long time he was an anchor on SportsCenter. Okay, the third thing I want to talk about is Bayou Independent Wrestling. I went to their event, Never Give Up, at the West Monroe Convention Center here in West Monroe, Louisiana, and I tell you, it was a lot of fun. And at this time, I want to congratulate John Saxon for winning the Deep South Heritage title in a Four Corners match. And I also want to congratulate Vordell Walker for beating Steve Anthony and becoming the new BIW champion. They're going to be back here in Monroe on August 22nd, and hopefully I'll be able to get there. Oh, and before I go on, I want to publicly apologize to Vordell Walker for something that happened afterwards. I accidentally bumped into him with my car. You see, we were talking to John Saxon and congratulating him for winning the Deep South Heritage belt, and I was about to pull off, but then somebody who was backing out of a parking spot almost hit me. I slammed on the brakes as hard as I could. I avoided not getting hit, but then I backed up so I could let that person leave, and I almost hit Vordell Walker. And Vordell, by the way, look, man, I want to apologize for that. I just explained what happened. Charge it to my head, not to my heart. And we hope to see you and just about everyone else on August 22nd back here in West Monroe. And also I want to give a shout out to Apocalypse. Great, man. You are an amazing wrestler, and hopefully one day you'll have a title of your own. And Barrett Brown, two awesome wrestlers. And also, they're two great people. I can't say any more. And I finally got a chance to meet two. DJ / radio personalities from ESPN 97.7 who were also there. I got a chance to meet Nick Harrison, who has his own show on ESPN 97.7 called Halftime. There Wednesday nights at 6 that I love to listen to, and then they're the producer of most of their shows, John Tabor, also known as Joe Dirt. And Joe Dirt, I like the Gray Wyatt getup that you had on. That was just awesome. Okay, and the last thing I want to talk about is Dr. Maya Angelou. As you all know, she passed away this week, and to say Dr. Maya Angelou is a poet, a teacher, a singer, a writer, and a director. All that to me doesn't say enough. To me, she is. I'm not going to say was, but she is, and forever will be, a national treasure. Of course, she's known for some of her poetry, namely the poem "I Rise," and she's also known for her autobiography entitled "I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings." But she's going to be sorely missed. She was a teacher at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And I can't really think of anyone that she's not an inspiration to. She's an inspiration to me. She's an inspiration to a lot of young people, a lot of scholars, a lot of teachers, a lot of students, and she will be sorely missed. Okay, that does it for the Victor Rant segment. Now, I did promise you last week that I was going to do a Comicology 101 segment. Unfortunately, I was so busy with other matters, namely that of work, and I just haven't had time to finish it. I started. It's actually one on. It's actually a series of Comicology segments I'm going to do, talking about Green Lantern. And the first one I was going to talk about was Hal Jordan. But I will have that done. But for right now, I want you all to enjoy this week's segment of DC versus Marvel. This one, it's a girl fight. It's Captain Marvel versus Power Girl. Let's go. Welcome back to DC vs. Marvel. This week, it's Power Girl versus Captain Marvel. Power Girl, who is technically Supergirl from a parallel Earth, exhibits all of the classic Kryptonian powers of Superman. Super strength, flight, super speed, invulnerability, X-ray vision, telescopic vision, microscopic vision, heat vision, freeze breath, and super hearing as the biological cousin of Superman. Captain Marvel possesses superhuman strength and durability, can fly at roughly 6 times the speed of sound, and discharges an explosive blast of radiant energy which she fires from her fingertips. She also demonstrates the ability to absorb other forms of energy such as electricity to further magnify her strength and energy projection up to the force of an exploding nuclear weapon. When sufficiently augmented, she can withstand the power of a 92-ton weight and strike with a similar level of force. Who will win? This is basically an alien going up against a human with hybrid alien-human DNA. The fight would start off physical with the two trading punches. They later start using powers against each other. Power Girl tries using her freeze breath against Captain Marvel, but the latter breaks free by manipulating radiant energy. She then hits Power Girl with the same radiant energy. Power Girl is somehow unfazed by it and uses heat vision on Captain Marvel. As a result, Captain Marvel summons her reluctant powers from her days as binary. The power she uses is the ability to absorb energy and manipulate it in a photonic form, thus knocking out Power Girl. Captain Marvel wins. This concludes this week's segment of DC vs. Marvel. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this week's segment of DC vs. Marvel. That's the first time that I've actually used females, and that's not going to be the last time. I mean, there are plenty other female DC and Marvel characters that I'm going to be using. And next week, here's the thing: I don't ever talk about what I'm going to do next week until the show of. Okay, there are no questions that were asked for me, so let's get to the comics I bought this week. Comic books I bought this week. First up is Red Lanterns number 26. I just got this in the mail last weekend, and this one they're on this planet, and unfortunately they get captured, and then they're about to be executed. But then one of their own, a Red Lantern named Ratchet, who is a life-size brain, sacrifices his life and takes all their shots for him and dies. And they end up fleeing and getting off planet. I just read this earlier today, and I tell you, it's a great book. Up next is Superman Wonder Woman number 5. They go up against Faora, who, believe it or not, was actually created for Man of Steel, but then they immediately brought her to the comics soon after, and as you can see right there, it says Faora in Krypton means death, and she's pretty much going to go up against Wonder Woman, just as General Zod's going to go up against Superman. So, as Michael Buffer would say, let's get ready to rumble! Alright, up next is Batman number 31. This is the first issue of the 0-year final act story arc, and in this one, Batman is still trying to come to terms of what what happened in the previous issue, and there's still a learning curve. There's still a lot of things that he has to learn. But don't worry, he's Batman. He gets better. Up next is Superman number 31. This is part of the Doomsday story arc. The last chapter of the book, the last book in the chapter, Infected. Just as Superman is going through a monstrous transformation, so is Lois Lane, but this time as a Coluan. If you don't know what Coluan means, the planet Colu, that's where Brainiac is from. So basically, what I'm trying to say is Lois Lane ends up becoming just like Brainiac. Alright, up next is Hulk number 2. This is the second issue of the new series that just came out, and he goes up a recently returned from the dead Abomination. And this is kind of weird considering that he had just he's really starting all over again after being shot in the back of the head at the very last issue of Indestructible Hulk, which was number 20. You know, he had to learn how to talk, learn how to walk, learn how to write, learn how to read. He basically just had to do it all over again. And now he has to deal with the return of an Abomination. Oh, by the way, this Hulk is savage again. He is more brawn than he is brain. He's not like the old Hulk who had just as much brain as he did brawn. So we'll see what happens. Up next is Uncanny X-Men number 21. Now in the previous issues, S.H.I.E.L.D. has pretty much they pretty much tried to find out that where the X-Men, where Cyclops' group of X-Men were. They even interrogated and captured a former student, one of Cyclops' disciples, and pretty much they interrogated, asked him where he was. But the only problem was, just like all those other students that were there, he doesn't know where it is. And then all this, and then a new breed of Sentinels start showing up. And for some reason, Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, thinks that that these Sentinels were courtesy of S.H.I.E.L.D. But then S.H.I.E.L.D. finds out. But then they question S.H.I.E.L.D. after they get a hold of the X-Men and find out that S.H.I.E.L.D. had absolutely nothing to do with these new Sentinels. I don't know who is. I could probably guess that this person right here is responsible for them. I've been reading the book, but I don't know. I pretty much drew a blank. I don't know who this person is, but well, it doesn't say it here, but we're about to. But in this issue, we find out who exactly this is, who is behind S.H.I.E.L.D. Could it possibly be Oliver Trask? All right, up next is Sinestro number 2. In the first issue, he finally does it. He finally got the band back together, and what I mean by that, he finally got the Sinestro Corps back. So now it's game on, and they're going to take on anyone in the universe, because that's how they roll. They're going to instill some fear in some people. Next is Red Lanterns number 31. They had pretty much tried to deal with Supergirl being a Red Lantern. I know it's kind of sad but true. But now they're going up against some more bad guys, and see what happens. Up next is Fantastic Four number 5. This is an extra size issue. Now in the previous issue, they go up against the previous few issues. They end up going up against the all new Frightful Four, which happen to be the Wizard, the Wrecker, the Absorbing Man, and then the new Meathead. Yes, there is a member of the Frightful Four called Meathead, and that in the Meathead, the original Meathead was a member of the Wrecking Crew, but then he ends up dying, and then his daughter takes the mantle of Meathead. Well, the Fantastic Four end up defeating them, and S.H.I.E.L.D. ends up coming by to take him into custody. But then, just as they thought everything was over, they were going to go back to, repair all the damage that happened to the Baxter Building. But then, when they get there, they find out that the Fantastic Four have been evicted from the Baxter Building, courtesy of S.H.I.E.L.D. And not only that, but all the Children of the Future Foundation have all been taken into S.H.I.E.L.D. custody. Oh, by the way, when they defeated the new Frightful Four, they also had help with their backup team called the FF. And the members of those team are Ant-Man, well, Ant-Man being Dr. Scott Lang, She-Hulk, She-Thing, or Miss Thing, one of those two. And who is the other member of the FF? I'm trying to remember. Someone's a poster. Oh, and Medusa. Well, actually, all of them but Medusa show up because Medusa is having some other circumstances she has to go through as a member of the Inhumans. All right, up next is Green Lantern New Guardians number 31. This pretty much picks up where Green Lantern Guardians Annual left off, and Star Sapphire is trying to go. I mean, the White Lantern, Kyle Rayner, aka the White Lantern, goes missing, and then Star Sapphire pretty much has to go after him because only she and the New Guardians know that he's alive. Everybody else, especially the Green Lantern Corps, were led to believe that he died sacrificing himself to defeat the villain Relic in the story arc entitled Lights Out. Up next is Justice League of America number 14. This is the final issue of this book, and you could and it's also the aftermath of Final Crisis. And as you can see, just about all these members are pretty much have pretty much deserted Steve Trevor, saying we don't want any more of this. And I think all of them end up becoming members of a brand new Justice League called Justice League United, and in this group, it's the Justice League basically out of Canada. Go figure. Up next is Guardians of the Galaxy number 15. In this issue, we find out how Captain Marvel ends up becoming a member of the Guardians, and a lot of interesting stuff have happened, including Rocket Raccoon almost dying. All right, next up is Nightwing number 30. This is the last issue of this book, and they're still trying to figure out. I mean, Nightwing is dead, but I can tell you right now, Dick Grayson isn't. Just a little heads up. And the Bat family is, trying to decide what to do or what direction they want to take. Some of them are having second thoughts about even, being part of the Bat family. But I can tell you one thing: Dick Grayson ends up getting another book. It's called Grayson, and this time he's a secret agent. Will I collect it? Probably not. We'll just have to see. All right, next up is Flash number 31. This picks up where the Flash annual Flash annual number 3 leaves off. The Flash from the future goes back to the present to kill himself, and he does it out of guilt. He does it because somebody died. Iris West's nephew Wally, who in a previous DC universe also took up the mantle of the Flash, dies in a car accident that leaves Iris West paralyzed from the waist down. Well, he goes back not to prevent the accident from happening, but to kill himself. And I'm thinking, okay, that doesn't really make any sense. Why would you want to do that? But also in Flash Annual number 3, the future Barry Allen, aka Flash, goes up against Gorilla Grodd, and he does the unthinkable. He blows his head off. So it's going to be very interesting what's going to happen in the future issues with the Barry Allen Flash from the future going to try to kill the Barry Allen Flash of the past, the present rather. And finally, up next is Avengers number 30. This is a tie-in to Original Sin, which is a great story arc because in this issue, the Watcher named Uatu is murdered, and with that happening, a lot of secrets that certain Marvel characters have been hiding come to light, and in this one we find out some of the secrets that have been held by certain members of the Avengers, and I can't wait to read this. Okay, that makes 15 I bought this week, which brings the total of comics that I bought since December of 1997 to 6,251. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode, this monumental 25th episode. And, well, I didn't do anything special. I didn't want to, because nobody made any suggestions. That's what I made the Comic Hero Fan Forum on Facebook for all of you who that have liked it, so y'all can give suggestions. The Bible says you have not because you ask not. I mean, if you want me to do something new on this show, I can't think of everything by myself. I mean, I'm okay with coming up with my own ideas, but I think it'd be helpful if any of y'all have any ideas. And so, get to it. Oh, at the beginning of the show, I asked in the Comicology 101 segment of Guardians of the Galaxy, what were the only words that Groot knew how to say? Was it A, hello, B, I am Groot, or C, no? The answer is B, I am Groot. And I can't wait to find out what Vin Diesel sounds like saying that. That's going to be quite comical. Okay, next week, episode 26. I don't know if I'll be here. I don't know if I'll be somewhere else. But I will try to give it my all, just like I do in every episode. Alright, I'm Victor Nunley. I'm the Comic Hero. We'll see you next week. Till then, be safe, be blessed, be a hero.